各位早晨。
Good morning. Thank you for tuning in to the Chief Executive's 2022 Policy Address Joint Radio phone-in program. Let me introduce myself and my colleagues. I'm Kenny Chen of the Commercial Radio. Next to me is Siu Lok Wen of the TMHK. Good morning. And also there's Edward Ho of the Metro Broadcast. Of course, our guest today is Mr. John Lee, Chief Executive. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And of course, it's important that you'll be joining us online. So you could call 2921-8889, 2921-8889 to speak directly to the Chief Executive. We'll be taking your calls soon. Chief Executive, let me start with some figures announced yesterday, today. You know, there is some opinion poll, and the rating for your Chief Executive for your policy address is 51.1. So it's above 50 for rating in recent years. But you compare to the previous three chief executives for your first policy address, the rating is slightly lower than that of theirs. So what do you have to say to that? Now, for any information that will help us find out about the thinking of the public, it would be good. So it doesn't matter what the rating is, or the score is, and we will make reference to that. I think what is important is we find out what the people are most concerned about. If they think we are doing well in certain aspects, that means we have met their demands. But then there are other areas that they're not happy with. I need to know about that so I could do more. And also I need to find out why they're not happy about it. And then, of course, with such opinion poll findings, as some philosophers have said, you may be walking into the same river each time, but then the water is flowing, so there may be different scenarios and factors. But what is most important is, as I've just said, if the public are happy about certain aspects of the policy address, but not the others, then that's most important. We need to know why they're not happy, and so we could do more. So I would like to collect views from the public. And also in Hong Kong, there are diversified views. It's always good to listen to different opinions. You know, whether the public are happy or not, it may depend. But what about yourself? Are you happy with this score or rating? Now, I always want to challenge myself. That's why I will not say how well I'm doing this time or not, because I want to do better tomorrow. So I keep challenging myself. And I think it's more important to challenge myself than to challenge others. And it's more important to challenge us a figure. And only then we could keep improving. Now, the public will probably focus on talents and light public housing. We'll talk about that later. But let's talk about the start and the end of your policy address. The title is Charting a Brighter Tomorrow for Hong Kong. So a sense of well-being is very important. How would you define what is, happiness for people of Hong Kong? If you look at the happiness index globally, Hong Kong is only ranked 81. 81st is not really high. So how could we enhance the happiness of the people or the sense of happiness? Now, of course, the sense of happiness is really personal. It's different for everyone. Some may feel that they're happy because the living environment is nicer, but then when they are used to that, then they will want to look for something else that will make them happy. So happiness is something we will pursue all the time, and there is not really an indicator as such. But then on the part of the government, we want to know what the public are concerned about. You know, we have a population of 7 million. Everyone may have different demands. So the government will have to look at the broader picture and direction. And then we could meet the needs of the public as far as possible. So that's why in the policy address, I have made some judgment. First of all, because I've listened to views during consultation, I'm thankful for that. And also we've received any submissions. And after we've analyzed all the views, then we would come to some judgment as to which are the most important issues that the people are concerned about. And then if we are able to deliver on those fronts, then people will feel happier. So that's the direction we take. And in my policy address, you know that there are several key points. First, housing and land. Second, increasing our competitiveness. Third, our healthcare system. I'm very much concerned about that. So these are our key areas. But then, of course, I'm concerned about every aspect of the government's work. But if we want to respond to the concerns of the public, these are the key areas I've decided upon. But then in the past 2-3 years, maybe people don't feel happy. That's why they have left Hong Kong. And then yesterday, there's this view that, well, yes, you are trying to attract talents, but what about retaining talents? What about bringing talents back from overseas? So apart from snatching talents overseas, what about those who are here? How can you keep them here? Tell them they should stay here because this is a place for them. So what do you have to say to that? Now, you seem to have come to this view that people leave Hong Kong because they don't feel happy. So you don't agree to that viewpoint? Well, I would just say it's too overgeneralization in a way, because people leave maybe because they are studying abroad, or because they have family overseas, or for certain individuals, there's room for development for them overseas. So it's not the case for everyone. So everyone has a different story why they leave Hong Kong. And over the years, we are used to people coming in and out of Hong Kong. I agree. During this period, there is a relatively high number of people leaving Hong Kong. And maybe the epidemic is one reason, because once you leave, it's hard for you to come back. But if it's so difficult to go out, people still leave. Well, then we have to see what the case is for Hong Kong. There is competition around the world. Overseas countries are also trying to snatch talents. They have some bold schemes. That with economic development, we need talents. That's why every place, every country is trying to attract talents. So they're doing more in that respect. And also because of the epidemic, it's not so easy to come back to Hong Kong because of the various restrictions. Well, yes, there is such a case as well. But then, in any case, from my point of view, we have to remember that Hong Kong is appealing in many ways. Now, before the 2019, before we had the Black Letter violence, before the Hong Kong independence movement or the unrest, or before the epidemic, that is, without all these serious impact in the last 3 years, Hong Kong had great advantages. Now, I was in the government for 4 years already. At the time, we didn't have to worry about talents. So we still wanted to attract talent, but, we didn't have to act so proactively as compared to now. So what I hope to do is that, first of all, I want to tell people about our advantages. This is our DNA. It's something we have. So because like Kenny Cho, this is your image. So that's how you attract people. So we need to remind people, because some may forget. And then secondly, now, we want to make ourselves more appealing because we have many more opportunities. The country is giving us many opportunities with the 14th Five-Year Plan, the Greater Bay Area development, and so on. And then we are also enhancing our competitiveness by attracting talent. So we try to keep a pool of bring a pool of talents to Hong Kong. With talents, that's how it works. If you have a critical mass of talents, then the pool will grow exponentially, and that's what we try to do here. We want to bring talents to Hong Kong, and when we reach a critical mass, then we'll make Hong Kong even more successful. And this time, there are some different policies too. We have policies for attracting enterprises. There are tailor-made programs. So for foreign enterprises that are well-known or are represented in the industry, they will be brought here. They will at least find out that Hong Kong is the right place for them, and then the talents will come, and then Hong Kong people will also realize that, well, actually Hong Kong is such a nice place. Even if they've left Hong Kong, they may think again. Shall I say overseas, or, is Hong Kong an option for me now? So what is important is that we, fully leverage on our own advantages, on our existing advantages, and also we try to gain new advantages. But then, if we compare to Singapore, you don't want to compare us with Singapore, but let's compare with Singapore. And some scholars say that your policies are similar to those of Singapore. And if Hong Kong wants to move ahead, you really have to relax the quarantine restrictions. Otherwise, all those measures may mean nothing. Why is that important?
With any policies, we cannot be short-sighted, and we have at least 2 years as the target we're going to review in 1 year time, and in 2 years time we can expand this, and after the review in a year's time we can make some adjustment in some ways. So with any policies, I think we have to cast a long sight, and there is some difference in Hong Kong with regard to quarantine by comparison with other jurisdictions. In March and April, we have seen huge fatalities. I mean, the whole healthcare system was crippled, and this is plain for all to see. To other people, this may be just a number, but to me, every single one belongs to this big family in Hong Kong. If there is misfortune happening to a family member, this is not just a number. I would see this as a family member getting into trouble. Now, when formulating policies, we have to be holistic, but Hong Kong's interest is very much my responsibility. Our objective is very clear with regard to COVID, and that is we allow the maximum room for economic activities, and for certain areas that would be very targeted, and I would allow the international mega events to go ahead. It's only on this basis that we proceed forward. Now, in terms of the draw for talents, there are some scholars that they compare this with Singapore. Now, the visa period is shorter than other jurisdictions. Our annual earnings are higher, and in Singapore, the family members can look for a job, but this is not in Hong Kong. Now, we're not half as attractive as other parts of the world in this regard, are we? Well, I beg to differ. I don't think we can compare like this. I don't think people should come away with the misconception. I respect other parts of the world, and they have their own policies pertaining to their own circumstances. It's for this reason that we have to look at the local employment. I believe that our program is very ambitious. We have cast our net pretty wide, and the net is extended to 100 top elite university graduates. And if they have the working experience, they can come to Hong Kong. This is covering 160 universities. Assuming that there are 5,000 graduates from each university, maybe more, maybe 10,000, the number can be really enormous. So we are very aggressive in grabbing talents. And in 2 years' time, you don't really have to have any job offer, and you can pursue your career in Hong Kong. Within 2 years, persons or individuals of this kind of caliber will certainly have a good future. Well, precisely, that's why I have a review mechanism. I'm going to review this every year. If this is in the best interest of Hong Kong, we will continue with that. And if there is any fine-tuning that would be needed, we are prepared to do it. If we can fine-tune in such a way that we need to control the number, we will do so. This is all very flexible. In other parts of the world, they have very successful recruitment system, and this may not be the same as the country that you refer to. So different countries have their own DNA. We do have our own DNA, and we have to strengthen our own DNA, and this is how I see the issue. Now, we are very ambitious in this regard. Would the members of the public feel that this is good enough? I think we have to listen to the public. The number to call is 2921 8889. Mr. Ho is on the line. Good morning, Mr. Ho. Good morning, Mr. Chief Executive. Good morning. Good morning. Hong Kong is full of talents. We have a big pool of talents. Now we've seen the chaos in Hong Kong. People are leaving in their droves. It's not because of any other reason. It's because of the draconian measures. Hong Kong treasure freedom. Now, we are really patriotic. Now, the mainland doesn't really love us, and there are other countries that are welcoming Hong Kong people unconditionally. Why is it that the talents are really leaving Hong Kong? I hope the chief executive will understand the reason. A year and a half ago, I got a feeling that you would become the chief executive. They prefer something from the disciplined forces. Your decisions are very quick, but I don't think you can do a lot of things. Mr. Chief Executive. I thank you very much, Mr. Ho. Basically, Mr. Ho is saying that the government should be held responsible for the loss of talents from Hong Kong, and also the world is opening up for Hong Kong, but this is not the case in Hong Kong. How do you react to this, Chief Executive? Well, the country is very concerned about Hong Kong, and this is evident in many areas. In March, April, in September, when Hong Kong was assaulted by Omicron, and we had, we're overburdened in many ways. Our testing capacity was stretched, and we ran out of healthcare workers, and unconditionally, the country, within 7 days, a matter of 7 days, built these makeshift hospitals, and they sent the really experienced medical experts to help with our COVID efforts, and they've also introduced the traditional Chinese medicine to alleviate our burden. There are many healthcare workers from the mainland who leave their family behind and come to Hong Kong. And I think all this is playing for everybody. This is all very emotional if you think about it. And the country is caring about Hong Kong in so many ways. And we do have a lot of policies that have regard to Hong Kong. Like if we are in crisis, they lend a helping hand, and there are measures that are favorable to Hong Kong. There are 8 centers under the 14th Five-Year Plan, and they're supporting these 8 centers. And all these are really examples of care. So I am grateful in this regard. I know that people would have different perspectives. My view is that the country has its own justification regarding the COVID policy. They have a population of 1.4 billion, and they do have the specific considerations. Now, when it comes to their COVID policy, this is across the board. Wherever you come from, you have to measure up to their requirements, and you can really go in. So it's all a matter of standards. When we deal with the mainland, I'm sure that without their approval, the reverse quarantine wouldn't have really seen the light of the day. Now, people didn't see the result, and they get the negative feeling. I do appreciate that. But I think we have to understand the reasons behind that. In the process, everybody is very passionate to get this off the ground. But regarding the COVID policies, in terms of the reverse quarantine, this is one of the standards referred to by the mainland standard. They have the precision approach regarding COVID. And one of the reasons we failed to achieve consensus is to standardize the requirements, like the closed loop management, and this is an important element. In Hong Kong, we have to make huge changes before we can achieve that. Negotiation is in hand. If you look at the entire objective. We want to have or resume the connection, and the country really understands that people are really keen to go back to the mainland. So connection is very important. And we haven't got the result, but it doesn't mean that we haven't done anything at all. All right, Ms. Choi is on the line. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chief Executive. Your point, please. I'd like to put a question about the talents. My son is studying overseas, and he got a family there. And if advocate, where are you talking about? San Jose. He works in Apple, or a large corporation. If he comes back to Hong Kong, what sort of benefits would he enjoy? Is that right? Well, I heard from the chief executive about all these package for these returnees. Well, let's hear from Ms. Kong. Ms. Kong is on the line. Yes, your point, please. Also on talents. Talents are very important to Hong Kong. Before 1997, we returned to Hong Kong, and our friends have emigrated from Hong Kong. And obviously, China has improved a lot. Now, we have a lot of advantages, and we have the Highland price policy, and we have a lot of policies that are not really favorable. I think you have to make it good for Hong Kong. All right, thank you very much, Ms. Kong. I mean, you have a wobbly line there. Chief Executive, would you respond to Ms. Choi and Ms. Kong, please? Right, thank you very much, Madam Choi. If your family member has held down a job, and if they want to come back to Hong Kong to pursue a career, I welcome them. Now, Ms. Choi's family member, I'm not sure whether they are permanent Hong Kong residents or whether they were born in Hong Kong. If they are permanent residents in Hong Kong, they can come back anytime they like and enjoy all the treatment that a Hong Kong person would enjoy. There are plenty of opportunities in Hong Kong if they have a job elsewhere, and we are upgrading our competitiveness. And I'm sure that he would stand a pretty good chance coming back to Hong Kong. If he's not a permanent Hong Kong resident, if he is an overseas resident, then it would be like the program that we attract top talents. If they are from the belong part to this scheme, and they will have the top talent pass. Now, we also have this talent service unit. Now, with this unit, it would render assistance in terms of healthcare, education, and housing, and so on. So we are offering a whole raft of measures for the top talents, and depending on the circumstances, they will be entitled to it. All right, let's take a break. We come back for more of the same after the break. You're welcome to call 2921 888 921 888.
Well, after 8:30, we're back to this joint radio phone-in program on the Chief Executive 2022 Policy Address. So welcome your calls. Please call 29218889. And then you could ask questions of the Chief Executive directly on the policy address. Now, we talked about talents just now. Quite a number of callers talk about that. And then another important livelihood issue, which is the focus of the policy address, of course, is the housing issue. Now, you say you're going to provide 30,000 units of light public housing in the next 5 years, and you're going to cap the waiting time. You're going to introduce a composite waiting time index. Then in 26, 27, you hope to bring that down to about 4.5 years. And then on KPI, though, there is no mention of the waiting time for conventional public housing. So is the cap 6 years? Is that a KPI? And what is the KPI for conventional public housing? What is the waiting time? Well, you have to see why we're doing this. If we go by the long-term housing strategy, where there is a projection of the demand for public housing in the next 10 years, which is about 300,000 units, we need land for building 300,000 units. And we can see that in the first 5 years, we are only able to complete a third of the number, and then in the second half of the year we're going to complete the remaining 2/3 of the units. So that means that in the first 5 years the situation is not so desirable. People have to wait. So as the government, do we just let people wait because after 10 years you all get housing? But no, we can't do that, because we're talking about who are inadequately housed. They want to move into public housing. So we have to do our best, therefore. In the first 5 years, because of the uneven distribution in the housing production, so what can we do to fill the gap? That's why we've come up with this concept of light public housing. We're able to provide 30,000 units of light public housing. Why are we so confident? Because we have identified the land already. We're talking about land that's not yet ready for development for other purposes. So we believe we could build these units and people could stay there for 5 years. Of course, we don't want people to have to move around, so that's why we want them to stay put at least for 5 years. And then after 5 years, there will be a substantial increase in supply. So in the first 5 years, when we don't have enough supply, we can use light public housing to fill the gap. And then in the next 5 years, and we will be able to double our production, so that will balance things out. That's the whole purpose of light public housing. And for those who get housed in public housing estate, we are giving them options. And even though this is light public housing, we're going by the standards of public housing, so the support measure facilities are fine. Now, 6 years, capping the waiting time at 6 years is for conventional public housing, not light public housing, right? Yes, 6 years is about the waiting time. We know, of course, what the waiting time is for conventional public housing. Are you capping it at 6 years? I'm talking about a composite waiting time. We are capping that. And of course, for those, who are just, on the side, and for those who are actually in this inadequate housing, or on the waiting list, the perception will be different, because. For me, who if I'm on the waiting list, I want to know if I could get public housing in 4.5 years. And if that's not possible, but then there's the option of light public housing, and with similar standards to public housing, there would be an option for me. So you mean if people opt for light public housing, then from your point of view, that means the person's been allocated public housing. But then he's still on the queue for conventional public housing when it's his turn, and he could choose to move to conventional public housing, or he could choose. So when it's someone's turn to get an allocation, he could choose either to take up the light public housing offer, or he would stay in the queue for conventional public housing. So that means the waiting time is more than 6 years, because you may opt for light public housing and then you have to wait some more time before you get conventional public housing. So 6 years is a cap for conventional public housing. Well, we know how many conventional public housing units we could build. And after 5 years, there will be the public housing production will double. So already that means there will be enough supply for those on the waiting list. We're not saying that we will have so many units built evenly every year. rather it's in the second 5-year period, the production will double. But for the first 5 years, what do we do? Do we just sit on hands? No, of course not. Like public housing, for those who have the need, we first need to meet their needs, right? And then so after 5 years, when the supply is doubled, then do we still need to keep like public housing? And it would depends on whether there is a need. If there is still a need, and so we could speed up the time for people to get housing, then of course we could keep it. But the most ideal scenario is that we could resolve the housing issue. It's not just about quantity; it's also about quality. Can you speed things up even further? 30,000 units are the total number. The first batch will only be available in 2024 to 25, and the first batch is just 1,000 units. So could you speed things up further? We are moving the fastest we could. Let's say you want to present or make a gift for your friend, you need time to make the gift. And then if we're building housing, we need first to have land. And we're already using the new government approach, that is we use MIC, modular integrated construction. It would take 1 year, that's the quickest. But in the past, the construction program is 4 to 5 years. And now we're compressing 4 to 5 years to 1 year. Can we move even faster? Of course, we would want to do that. But already we have compressed the timetable as far as we could. And I'm really grateful to my colleagues that they're able to compress the building program from 4 to 5 years to 1 to 2 years using the containers and MICs, and so I'm really grateful to them. Now, in the past, there was not even this concept. Now, my colleagues have now come up with this idea, and I'm really grateful. Well, there is a local group that criticizes that you're just trying to, cook up the numbers with this composite waiting time. And then the Ming Pao commentary say that the waiting time for public housing may look nicer, but then the queue has not really been shortened. Like public housing is not the same as conventional public housing. With conventional public housing, there will be support facilities like community facilities, park, and so on. And then like public housing will be built with some containers, and it is not permanent. So, and then you put the two waiting time figures together to make a composite under. So, is it right? Is that really the real picture? Well, it depends whether you just look at figures as an outsider, or you put yourselves in the shoes of those on the waiting list. Now, if you just look at figures, then if you look at waiting time queue, then there are 10 persons left waiting for housing. Then these are just hard figures. But then for those waiting for public housing, they want to be allocated public housing as soon as possible. When I talk to mothers, children in subdivided units, they were living in really appalling housing conditions. There's water seepage, there is poorly ventilated, and so on. So they want to leave those living conditions as soon as possible. And so here we're not talking about just hard figures, because I just don't want to focus on figures. What I want is that for those who are suffering, I want to help them. And that's why we've come up with this scheme, so they could get public housing sooner. It may be just 3 to 18 months. For those outsiders who are just looking at figures, it doesn't matter to them. For those who are living in such a poor living condition, they want to stay there. 1 day is too long. Even if they could move out 3 days sooner, they'll be happy. But then for like public housing, you mean it would be much nicer than, say, subdivided units? Let's look at the reality. What do we care most about in Hong Kong? Of course, this is not the ideal situation, but then at every stage there are issues of pressing concerns. And if you talk about the ideal 20 years later, and then we ignore the concerns of people in the next 5 years, that's not the way to deal with it. So that's why I want to address issues. Well, many are calling in. We have Ms. Chan now on the line. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, we can hear you. Good morning, Chief Executive. Good morning, hosts. Now, in the policy address over the years, there's no mention of HOS. It's like a lucky draw, and people may not win in the lucky draw after many attempts. So, would there be any improvement? So, you just want to talk about HOS? Anything else? No, that's all. Because for HOS, I don't know how long I have to wait. and if we are not qualified to apply for public rental housing because of the income limit, and for private housing, there's no way I could afford it. Oh, and then Ms. Cheng is also online. Ms. Cheng is concerned about GHS. Yes, Ms. Cheng. Good morning, Chief Executive. Good morning, hosts. I'm living in public rental housing now. The unit is large, 45 square meters. I'm interested in GHS, but then in the latest round of GHS, we can see that Hong Kong, I think, has the most expensive housing, or at least we're among the top 3 around the world. And so I want to switch to GHS, but I want to keep my budget within $2 million, and I could get a unit of 40 to 50 square meters, so I could improve my living condition. And then I could also surrender my public rental housing units for others who are in need. But then even for this round of GHS, I would not be able to afford it. I want to keep my budget within $2 million. How many family members do you have? 3 to 4 persons in a household. If I have a son and a daughter, I want to have 3 rooms, even if the rooms are small. At least they will have their own rooms. And if I want a better living condition, then you need a single bed, 3 to 3.5 feet wide, and a closet. Otherwise, the room would be too tight. And Mrs. Spoon is also on the line. Good morning, Mrs. Spoon. Good morning. About this policy of retaining talents, and you will keep talents aged over 45. My son is just over 40 years old. 2 years ago, he wasn't over 40 years old, but in the past 2 years, my husband was in poor health condition, so he didn't leave. But many of his colleagues left Hong Kong. So for those aged 40 or above, do you have any preferential treatment for them? He now works at the Science Park. He's some sort of IT personnel. So and we live in public rental housing, but because the income limits now exceeds that PRH limit, so that he have to leave. He actually wants to leave Hong Kong. So are there any measures to keep people like him? Otherwise, if it's not because of us, that he would have left. Okay, Mrs. Spoon talks about his son, her son, and also there's HOS and GHS mentioned. Chief Executive, please.
When we talk about the public housing supply, this light public housing is a kind of rental housing. But in the entire policy, we're also looking at the home ownership scheme as well. In our information, we have enough land supply that enables us to meet the demand under the long-term housing strategy. Of course, we have the rental housing. I mean, we have the back-heavy or the backloaded kind of situation. I know they're in different stages. The land and housing problem vary from time to time. But I mean, this is a problem that has been building up for years, and each successive administration has been trying their best. But we have all these procedures and regulations that make the land supply to be available, will not be available for a long time. So we have to look at the land and housing policy, and we're trying to telescope the procedures, and there is a need for that. We're going to have 5 pieces of legislation that we will be introducing to the electoral for amendments. So we will be compressing the entire land supply process, and we will be able to shorten half the time of larger plots. And I mean, we're trying to turn the primitive land to spade-ready land in a short space of time. We cannot really magic up the land. We have to create the land. Well, it's also about the quantity. The caller said that she never got the chance in the lottery. Well, I heard that in the consultation. So in this exercise. We are dealing with the rental housing first as a matter of priority. Although we are aware of the concern that we are compressing the procedures, that will also help the supply. Also, there was mention of the GSH and the discount. Will there be any further discount? Is it a legitimate expectation? She would like to have a flat for less than $2 million, and she can petition that into 3 rooms. Well, we have really a massive discount, and we are providing the discount according to the situation. We heard the views there, and I hope that you'll be aware that the policy address is not static, and we are telling the public all these measures, and we're moving in these directions. The policy address is all about the macro plans, and all the other measures will follow. We have Mr. Lau on the line. I have a PhD from Hong Kong U, and with PhD, it is really hard for me to find a job. And this is not me saying, and a lot of people who said this as well. I'm into the research area, and in Hong Kong, people don't really want to buy from us unless our R&D has been proven. And in Hong Kong, we do have a lot of opportunities. If you can tie in with the science park and the universities and come up with good ideas for the members of the public, and the members of the public can also contribute their input, then we should be able to unleash our innovative potential. So I hope that you would offer more opportunities in the I&T field. And there are some staff members who would disappear after a few months. And HK, there are some professors who hire people to write the papers for them. And there are all these problems there. Thank you. Thanks very much. There are 2 more callers. Ms. Kwok is on the line. Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chief Executive. Good morning. I've got a question about housing. I am from the middle class myself. I did own my property before, but I've offloaded it. And the property prices keep skyrocketing. It would be hard for me to get on the housing ladder again. So, Mr. Chief Executive, the housing policy is there to help the rental housing people, and also those who are trying to get the housing ladder for the first time. So, Mr. Chief Executive, I'm wondering how you can render me any assistance to get back on the housing ladder. All right, she is trying to get back on the housing ladder, not a first-time buyer. Right, Mr. Ng is on the line. Good morning. Morning, Chief Executive. Mr. Chief Executive, I'm grateful to you for all the efforts you put in to come up with ideas. In terms of land supply, I understand that you're trying to identify formed land. In Yau Tong, for instance, there is a plot of land that's been lying vacant for an awful long time, for about a decade. It's about the size of half of a Taikoo Shing. It's been lying around for so long. You keep saying that you're running out of land. Also, the planning for housing. Now, Mr. Chief Executive, if you grace us with your presence, you can have a look at the cement plant there, which is very, very close to the residential dwellings. It's like a sandstorm there every day, and so many people are adversely affected. I mean, we saw a fatal accident involving a cement mixer. So I hope that you will address all these problems. All right, there are 3 callers with different views. Mr. Chief Executive. All right, Dr. Lau referred to the R&D. We do run short of people in this regard. I mean, according to all the information that we gathered, what Dr. Lau said, I think there can be some improvement. And Dr. Lau himself is involved in R&D. Now, a lot of R&D is undertaken by universities. Previously, we didn't have any proactive policy to commercialize the R&D deliverables, and it is not something that ties in with what we're trying to do. Now, there are some R&D outcomes, but they can be commercialized. It would be up to the universities. And they would exercise the judgment, but I mean, sometimes they're on the conservative side and they may not make the right judgment. And they want to commercialize deliverables that promise to be successful. So we are trying to push this area. There are two phases. The first phase is we try to commercialize the R&D outcomes. And we are trying to minimize the cost of failure because there is subsidy and there are 100 that we're going to be subsidizing. We hope that with this in mind, you will be going ahead with this. And also, those who are involved in the R&D outcomes would like more people to be involved. Now, there is also the copyright implications. If we make the pie bigger, then all the stakeholders will stand to benefit more. So from the government's point of view, we would like to make it more beneficial to the whole society. So what we are trying to do this One Plus scheme. It is a win-win situation. Dr. Lau certainly would benefit from that particular scheme. And universities will be more open-minded with this scheme, and the successful products would certainly get more sponsorship and support. Plus the fact that this is a whole package. If the government is going to subsidize that, I believe I put in $1, you're going to get $2. I mean, this is how it works out. So innovation and technology and R&D is something that we are very ambitious about. We fully appreciate that. I bought a property and I traded up. I mean, this is how it works for me. The government would like to offer as much help as possible, but in terms of the property prices, I think we have to tread carefully. This is a very sensitive subject. Other than the actual needs, there is the element of investment and speculation. So the government has to formulate the policies in a way that will not cause any shock in the market. So in formulating the policies, we have to transparently tell people the supply situation, and people will be able to work out roughly the trajectory of the market. We should avoid a situation where there is massive fluctuations, because that would be beyond people's expectation. So we have to have the safety coefficient. I mean, we should avoid the massive fluctuation at all costs. Is there any room for adjustment? I think we have to look at the actual situation of the market. Right, that's it for this round, and we're going to come back for more of the chief executive. You're welcome to call through the hotline 2921 889 2921 889, and you can put your points to the chief executive. See you in a bit.
時間嚟到9點。
Well, it's now after 9. Welcome back to the Chief Executive's 2022 Policy Address, the radio phone-in program. If you wish to speak to the Chief Executive directly, please call 2921-8889. Chief Executive, just now some callers asked about trying to buy a unit again. You know, property prices have been, the harsh measures for property market have been in place for some 10 years. It seems that it has suppressed prices a bit, but then there is less turnover in the secondary market as a result. You say it takes time to first form sites and then build housing units. Now that the property prices have come down a bit, is there room to relax the harsh measures? Well, we do keep a close watch of the situation in a dynamic manner. And as mentioned earlier, we introduced those measures at the time because of certain reasons, but are those reasons still there? Because we were worried about speculation that would push property prices to an astronomical level, and we don't want to see that. And we still have this condition. So we have to look at several factors. First, we have to see whether existing property prices are still high, and we have to look at the transaction volume, and then thirdly, we have to look at the economic situation in Hong Kong and also the changes around the world. Now, we look at the day-to-day transaction figures. We have to look at those figures, and we have to compare these figures with the figures when the harsh measures were introduced. And what we see now is there is still a reason to keep the harsh measures, at least at this point in time, but we will keep watching the situation and the changes. Property prices have to drop to a certain level before it's time to relax the measures. Well, it depends. As I said earlier, when we want to do something, we have to first think why we're doing that. Now, okay, with prevention control measures, why are we introducing those measures? And so now, if the problem still is there, I think people still think property prices are high now. Now, okay, if we're concerned about high housing prices, we're also concerned about speculation. Some have said we are now proposing scrapping the extra buyer stamp duty for imported talents is because you want to prop up the property market. So you see there is a diversity of views in the community. And as we formulate government policies, we have to consider all factors. I and the Financial Secretary are very much concerned about the development of the housing market. That's why we watch the figures every day. We are watching the situation every day. What about the housing ladder? Is there any room for improvement? Well, the housing ladder, yes, we're still keeping the established practice. That is, we have public-private rental housing, and then with HOS, GHS, there's private housing. We also want to have starter homes to help first-time home buyers. So this is a very reasonable housing ladder, and if people more or less have more or less accepted the housing ladder. The question is whether we could boost supply, and whether there is any room for further adjustment to the discount for property prices. Now, we talked about various plans in the past. Would there be a John Lee plan in future? I think it's really about a plan for the citizens is what they think is good. So we move in that direction. As I said, if we are able to supply more units that will meet the needs of the public. Just now, a lady said she could never get a GHS unit because there are not enough units. So why do we not have enough units? Because we have to first find the land, and then we have the land, we have to compress the building program. That's why in the policy of stress, I've said very much on this issue. And we have to amend so many pieces of legislation. And apart from that, we also have administrative measures. Now, we have the whole process, the vetting of plans, and we have to speed up the process as well. And I think, we need to meet a certain target, 80%, I believe, for the first-time approval and second-time approval. So in the whole building process, we want to change things. We want to digitize the arrangement, and that's why we want to build a BIM system. Every government wants to do more and better, but now we've set our targets, and we're grateful to the industry and the members of the community for giving us the view so we could set these targets, and so we'll see how we could speed up production in in every way. And even with the compulsory sale threshold, we have listened to views. That's why we've relaxed the threshold. And because in some dilapidated buildings, they're really in a state of disrepair. The ceiling may even fall off. So, and then some owners are not in Hong Kong. So how do we help to speed up the development of these old house blocks? So it's because we've heard the views of the public. So there's much wisdom among the public. And now there's so many demands. The government will try to meet all the demands, but then we have to first deal with the pressing demands. And if we are able to speed up our work quickly, we'll do so. And we won't stay static, because in the next 5 years, we're going to resolve issues every single day. So you could continue to give us our views, and then we'll see if we could come up with some ways to deal with that, because we want to help the public. Apart from the housing market, everyone is concerned about the financial market. The stock market is not performing so well. Yesterday, you mentioned that for the Hong Kong Stock Exchange, is going to introduce new listing rules to allow the listing of a new tech stock that's not been much commercialized in a way. So do you think it will, boost activity in the tech stock market? Because you used to be among the top three, but now we're not doing so well in the last year. And are you confident that for the new board that will help the stock market to perform better? I'm definitely very confident. Of course, the investment market is under impact around the world. It's not just Hong Kong. So the economic situation around the world affect the Hong Kong stock market. I'm sure you know better than me, Edward. Now, on the part of the government, we can't do anything to influence the overseas markets. So what can we do for ourselves? The weather is, things are stable or there are storms. It's important that we build a strong enough ship to weather the storm. So we have to see where we could, strengthen our capabilities in a way. And, that's why I've mentioned many policies in the policy address. We have to identify our own weaknesses. For example, GEM. How can we enhance the GEM board? It's not just tech companies, that may be small and medium-sized enterprises. So that's why we need to talk to the stock market and other the stock exchange and other relevant organizations. And then how do we make our markets more appealing? For example, with this new measure, especially for tech stock, we don't have to look at their profit margin or their assets or their revenue. So why am I confident in our financial system and the stock exchange? Because it's because of liquidity. Edward, you know better than me. The transaction volume is important. I think we are among the top around the world in terms of transaction volume. So liquidity is the most important. People are able to sell and buy quickly. There's efficiency, and then also our regulatory regime is in line with that in other places. And then stability is important. Now we have a pool of talents and experts in Hong Kong in respect of the financial market. Well, in the financial market, yes, we have some wastage, but then because there is no geographical constraint, so we're still doing fine there. And of course, we want to do even better. So in terms of talents and our system, we have an edge. And also, we are a common law jurisdiction, with the financial market. Or the more important financial markets around the world, they have similar systems. So again, it's our own DNA. We should be confident in our own DNA. Maybe when flu hits us, then maybe we won't be so active for a short period of time, but in the long run, our DNA determines everything. And then we have a new maintenance, we have a new oxygen supply. Of course, then we will be active again. So that's why I'm confident in response to your question. And I think, standing united is also important. We have many talents and brilliant talents, but then if they work on their own, they won't be as powerful as a group of united people who may be less talented in a way. But I think history has proven that to be true. In Hong Kong, we have, many, working together. We want Hong Kong to show the world again that we are a vibrant city full of opportunities and vitality. So we want people to come back. And we like to draw comparisons, but many have said that Hong Kong is a lot more fun. In other places, it's a bit more boring. So this is one reason we could attract talent. So we are diversified. Community is very convenient, and compact city, and those are our edges. So you please call 2921-8889, then you can speak directly to the Chief Executive. We have Ms. Wong on the line. She wants to ask about stamp duty. Ms. Wong, good morning, Chief Executive. Good morning, host. I and my boyfriend are planning to get married. We are both from the middle class. We earn about $50,000 a month. And we work, honestly, as the Chief Executive says, Hong Kong is a diversified place. We never plan to leave Hong Kong. We want to buy a home, and we don't have support from our parents. So we are more than prepared to work hard and save up, really hard every month so that we could have enough for down payment. And we don't, we are not ambitious. We want to, do it step by step. We just want to buy a home where we can, which will be our happy home. We're talking about $4 to $5 million in terms of our budget. But then it's really hard for us to save up for the down payment. And then if we want to buy a $4 to $5 million flat, then that means we have to pay tax of some stamp duty of some $150,000. That adds to our burden. So maybe you like parents, you want us to see us get married, you want us to form our start a family. And stay in Hong Kong happily because we want to leave, and we're not making so much money. We're not the only case. I'm sure there are many like us. So you want to buy private housing or what? Private housing, of course, because we are not qualified to buy HOS. So for $4 to $5 million, you don't really have many choices.
Our next caller is on the line, Ms. Wong. Or Mr. Young. Mr. Young, good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chief Executive. I am a surveyor myself by profession. We are professionals in the construction industry. We really want to embrace the development of the GBA, and we're going to have the 1 hour living circle and the northern metropolis and Tianhai development. Does the government have any policy to attract? You do have the policy to attract talents to Hong Kong, and we really want to venture up north. Are there any policies that would support us? Will our credentials be recognized in the mainland if we want to venture up north? Any support there for us, please? Right, GBA development. All right, let's take another call. Mr. Lee is on the line. Good morning. Well, the people of Hong Kong, in particular elderly people, they have a lot of renminbi holdings in the mainland. Because of the closed border, we cannot really go to the mainland to withdraw the money there. And the second is the KPI from the civil service. There are many senior citizens that are feeding the bottles into the reverse vending machine. There is a milk tea that is manufactured in Hong Kong. They have the barcode there, and they find it impossible to feed the bottle into the reverse vending machine. why do you have the KPI? You have all these plastic bottles all over the place. Now you simply cannot return these plastic bottles. I'm not sure how the EPD can deal with that. They are on a really fat income every single month. I hope the chief executive would really face up to this issue, particularly the reopening of the border. Right, chief executive, 3 callers there, please. Right, about the acquisition of property ownership, is difficult to get a housing ladder. I've already explained the government policy. I know that you do have the aspirations. We will be producing enough, and there will be enough supply from the private sector, and the prices would become more realistic. As I said, the housing prices are really sensitive, and because this is liable to cause a shock, right? I believe it is coming down to 4 to 5 million, that there will be a really big shock, right? There are many people who want to buy property. There are people who really already own property. There will be impacts. I think we should help people to realize their aspiration to get on the housing ladder. Now we have to make sure that there will be stable supply, and they can see the possibility there. And in terms of loans, we can see what can be done. We haven't stopped contemplating a wide variety of measures. And also the professionals who want to venture into the GBA to pursue their development. Indeed, in certain GBA cities, there is a recognition of certain qualifications, like in the building and landscape architect and so on. And I think we can certainly take this forward. There are plenty of opportunities in the GBA, and how can we implement these measures on the ground is another matter altogether. The borders are not closed. It's just that you have to serve the quarantine there. I think we have to get the record straight there. Here, I have set up a steering group on integration into the national development, headed up by me, and the top secretaries are the vice chair. Now I have these top secretaries assisting me, and we have to expand the scope there. Of course, all governments would like to expand the scope of possibilities. But I think it would be far better to have 4 people to deal with it than one single person dealing with it. So this focused approach will certainly quicken the pace, and we will be raising the speed there. And there will be more that will be done, I'm sure. And we will be liaising with various cities in the mainland at the working level and also at the high level. We have a good mutual trust, and in certain cases we need the endorsement of the top echelon. And that's the reason why I make it such a high-powered steering group. I'm grateful to the top secretaries. There are so many issues that we'd like to take forward. As I said, we understand the mainland's COVID policy. They do have a lot of considerations. I'm sure you understand the justifications for the COVID policies that are implemented in the mainland. And we are moving towards the goal of opening the border. But there are concerns that if we implement 0+0, that would be an impediment of opening the border. Is that really the case? Well, there are different interpretations of 0+0. Some said that when doing nothing at all. Some interpret that as maintaining the testing, and there are different interpretations there. And in absence of any definition, I think we should strive for the maximum scope for the activities. Well, let's take some more calls. Mr. Zhang is really want to talk about the healthcare voucher. Yes, please. I've got a question for the Chief Executive. In the policy address, there is the proposal to share use, to have shared use of the healthcare voucher scheme for the elderly couples. My wife is not 60 yet. Can we use co-use the healthcare voucher? All right. Ms. Wong is on the line. Good morning. Good morning. Go ahead, please. My question for the Chief Executive is about the shared use of the elderly healthcare voucher. I'm single myself. Now, you're going to offer $2,500. And if I visit the private practitioners 4 times, it would go beyond the $2,500. Now, have you spare any thought for the old folks like me? I'm hitting 80 now. How are you going to address the problem for me? All right, healthcare voucher for the elderly. Chief Executive. Well, thanks very much for the 2 senior citizens question. The healthcare voucher scheme is intended to look after the senior citizens. They have to fulfill the criteria before they would be entitled to it. And on this basis, we are enhancing the scheme to such an extent that the couples can share use the healthcare voucher. If one of them is not eligible yet, that remains the reality. The whole idea is to help the elderly people because they do have medical needs more than other people, and the waiting list for the hospital services, we like to offer as much help as possible. So with the healthcare voucher scheme, they don't have to be stuck with the waiting for the hospital services, and they can go patronize the private sector. And this is what we are seeking to do. So for the healthcare services, we are expanding this to the community instead of focusing everything on the hospital authority, because this is really unsustainable. So the senior citizens can go to the private practitioners, and we like to cover the medical care in the community. So instead of just A, people can go to A, B, C, and D. So the network will be expanded that much more. It is no simple task in the process. So that's why we have a bureau that is coordinating the whole system. So in future, there will be a network, and they have to register themselves in the network for this primary healthcare system, and they can exercise their choice. Now we have the district health station that can make the referral, and you can pick and choose which one will be of the most benefit to you. I fully appreciate that these $2,000, I believe, is used for the primary care. We're offering additional $500. And you have to understand the whole idea of the primary health care system. All right, that's where all the time we have for the radio phone-in for the Chief Executive. My thanks to my colleagues today. That's it for today. Thank you very much. Goodbye.